let's talk about H.R. 2, because that's the House Republican bill that calls basically to resume some of the Trump-era policies, including building the Trump-era border wall. It would strongly increase the restrictions on who could apply for asylum. Critics of that say it would essentially gut the asylum process. It certainly would restrict it. That bill is not going to get 60 votes in the Senate. And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, I leave to you. But it won't get 60 votes in the Senate. It won't get signed by a Democratic president. Is there a compromise on border security that's being negotiated right now that you would allow to be voted on, even if a majority of House Republicans are not behind it? Something that would improve the situation at the border, even if not to the point that you want it to be improved?
Jake, the reason that we've insisted on the provisions of H.R. 2, which is the bill that we passed 7 months ago that's been sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk collecting dust, the reason we've insisted upon that is because each of those provisions work together to secure the border. You can't, for example, just reform the asylum program and leave the broken parole process unrepaired. Then you would have a loophole that would do absolutely nothing. You can't just reinstate Remain in Mexico. Even just that action would stem the flow, estimated about 70%. But you have to also end catch and release. All these things work together, and so you can't just pick and choose from them from a menu and expect that you're going to solve the problem. I'll quote to you one of the sheriffs of Terrell County down here, a border county who has to deal with this crisis every day. He had lunch with us today, and he told us, he said before he became the sheriff, he worked for the U.S. Border Patrol for 26 years. He said he had worked through 4 administrations who were doing great work, but it took less than 6 months for the Biden administration, in his words, to unwind 100 years of progress that the U.S. Border Patrol had accomplished. 6 months. These are policy choices that got us in this situation, and what we're demanding is that the policies change for the good of every single American citizen.
But I guess my question is if you don't get H.R. 2, that's it? You're not willing to, let's say there was, I mean, I've seen the White House and the Democrats in the Senate go in your direction on this issue more than I've ever seen Democrats go in your direction. And I've been in this town for a little longer than you. I've seen President Bush try to do this. I've seen President Obama try to do this. And it always comes down to the House Republicans and what they're willing to accept. You would turn down a compromise that was not 100% of H.R. 2?
Jake, I'm not going to answer hypotheticals because they've not sent us any suggestion yet. There's no draft bill, but I would tell you, I don't care if they call it H.R. 2. I do care about the provisions that will seal the border. I don't think now's the time to do comprehensive immigration reform because, to your point, it's very complicated. It's very complex to do. But we can seal the border. We could do it overnight. The president has the existing authority under existing federal law to do that, and he refuses to do it. Secretary Mayorkas has administered this. He's in charge of operational control of the border. And what we see here is absolute mayhem. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. Right. It affects every American and every citizen along here. That's who they need to listen to.
The argument is that there's only so much a president can do. Even Donald Trump could not seal the border. Even when the Remain in Mexico policy was in place in 2019, there was still a migrant crisis. There was still a crisis at the border. And you might remember all those TV ads that Donald Trump ran in 2018 about the caravan heading into the United States. A lot of people say this needs to be solved by Congress. You're the guys that write the laws. You're the ones in charge of asylum. And yes, President Trump or President Biden could do X, Y, or Z, but it's really up to Congress.
When President Trump entered the Oval Office, he put in the Remain in Mexico policy, he ended the catch and release policy, he did the fundamental common sense things that stem the flow. It was down to a tiny fraction of what it is right now. Jake, 302,000 encounters at the border in December alone. It's the highest number in history. And it's going to continue because they're showing no inclination at all to change it. They have rolled out the welcome mat. By the way, this is costing American taxpayers billions and billions of dollars to house and feed and educate and give health care to all these illegals. If you're from one of these poor countries, why would you not make the journey? Why would you not submit your children to that dangerous journey? We don't know what's happening to them on the way.
Yeah.
This is a humanitarian crisis. We walk through the centers today, Jake, it would make the average American citizen cry to see what's happening here, and it must stop.
Right, which is why some people are saying, why not pass the $14 billion supplemental bill that President Biden has put before you to at least try to help with some of these issues.
That won't solve. That won't solve any of the problems I just articulated.
Right,
that won't do a darn thing.
Well, I'm sure the people in the Border Patrol agents that you're with think it might do something, at least in terms of making their job a little easier for the next month or so.
No, actually they don't.
They don't want the $14 billion?
No. I just quoted to you the deputy chief of the U.S. Border Patrol, and he said he doesn't need more buckets. In other words, he doesn't need more personnel to handle the flow. He needs to turn the flow off. That's what we're talking about. This is not about sending more money down here. It's about changing the policy, and the White House seems not to understand that.
Yeah, but I mean, even President Trump couldn't turn the faucet off, right? I mean, I understand your point that he did more than Biden did.
He turned the flow down.
Yeah, but it's not. It's the presidency. It's not a magician. But let me just ask you one quick question.